I truly am grateful for an opportunity not just to be here today, but to be a part of something so special, what God is doing. God truly is doing something special in our time, in this state, and we get the opportunity to see it firsthand. So don't miss it. And I'm so thankful for a pastor like this. We don't just high five each other and for that, but we truly do appreciate him. If you have been touched by what United Church is doing, what our pastor has done, will you all just give it up for him? I tell you, it's amazing. It's amazing to see what God is doing. Today, if it is your first time, I want to say you came on a great week. You came on a perfect week because I truly believe that this message is going to answer some questions that you are asking. If you've been in church your whole life, I really believe that this message is for you too. I think it's going to answer some questions that you are asking because as a team, we talk about what God is speaking to our church, what God is doing. And so we are really excited for this morning, as we answer a question that we all will ask at some point in our life, as we look at something that we will all feel at some point, and we all must decide what we're going to do with that feeling. Every single one of us will have to face this question and this feeling, and decide what we're going to do about it. Before we get to that question, I want to talk about some life stuff real quick, though. Everyone's been getting sick over the past couple weeks, and I was one of the ones that fell victim to it. On Monday, I got the 24-hour bug, but I'm like a manly man. I've been trying to work out, stay fit, growing a beard, go out the woods sometime, just hang out there, smell like a man, And so I get sick with 24-hour bug. I'm like, I want to beat this thing in 20 hours. I want to show this thing who's boss. But by the end of 6 hours, I am the biggest baby. The most energy I spent all day was moving from the bed to the couch, and I was exhausted after that trip. And so the ladies did 5K yesterday. Monday, I did like 2 steps, and I had to take a breather. I was like, oh, I'm tired. This is a long, long day. And so I'm a massive baby when I get sick, so I'm on the couch, and Leisha gets home from work. I'm like, hey, baby, can you just make me some ramen noodles? I've had a long day on this couch. I'm exhausted. And so I eat ramen, haven't eaten that since college. There's 3 million grams of salt in it and 2% noodles, but I always convince myself there's some protein in there somewhere. You never realize how long 24 hours is until you're sick. You never realize how long it is until you're sick of someone too. Like you're around someone, you're like, oh, why are you always talking? Why are you still talking to me right now? How you doing? You never realize how long time is when you're around someone you can't stand or you're sick. You never realize how long 3 days is until you go on a magical first date and you're waiting to hear back from them, but they didn't think it was so magical. So you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. You never realize how long that time is. You never realize how long a week can be when you just want to hear something back from the doctor. It doesn't even have to be good news. Just some kind of news. Just an answer. What's going on with me? What's happening? Never realize how long a year can be until your spouse gets deployed or you get deployed. You never realize how long a year can be until you lose someone and then a year goes by. It just feels like so long. Never realize how long a year can be when you keep coming to church. Keep singing songs, keep believing, but you hear nothing from God. And you got some things in your life that you need to answer for. And so you bring them to church every week and you sing the songs and you listen to the message and you're trying to listen for the voice of God, and you got nothing. And so week after week, you search for the voice of God. And you hear nothing. We must all face this time, whether or not you believe or not, no matter how long you've been in church. You're going to have to figure out what to do when you feel like God is silent. What do you do when you need a word from God for your life? What do you do when you feel trapped, when you feel so alone? What do you do when you feel this pressure and you just ask the question of God, why are you silent? Why can't I hear you? Why? I keep trying. I got nothing. This morning, the title of the message and what I want to talk about is when God is silent. When God is silent. And here's what I do believe, though, is that even when God is silent, that God's long silence is not his absence. That his long silence, you not being able to hear God, does not mean that he is absent. But I know a lot of people, and a lot of times, even personally, you can wait and hear something, and all you get is quiet. All you get is silence, and you are convinced that God is not there with you. That God does not care for you, that He's not for you. He doesn't hear you. He's not seeing you. He's not seeing the pain that you're in, seeing the troubles that you're going through. But I truly believe that God's long silence is not his absence. But if you don't, I want to say that you're not alone. You're not the only one that feels that way right now in this room. You're not the only one that's ever felt that in your life. In fact, a lot of people in the Bible felt the same exact way. That they would wait for a word from God and it just wouldn't come. In fact, in the Old Testament, God would always speak to his people through prophets. And prophets had to have like a long kind of resume in order for them to have that title. They would have to hear from God and speak things, and then they would have to come true. You want, someone speaking for God for it to be, correct and right. And so it would have to be that. It would have to line up with the rest of what God was saying. And so there was a guy named Malachi, and he was on point. Everything he said, it was boom, boom, happening one after another. What he was saying was coming true, so people knew that he was hearing from God. And so one day Malachi comes out to the people, he's like, hey, God is sending help because as we can all probably agree, without God, we are in trouble. Humanity is not very good on our own, so God is going to send someone to help. People are like, yeah, that sounds good. How long, Malachi? Soon? Maybe. Look, my friends and I have different ideas what soon means. If y'all don't have those friends that soon means something very different, I can introduce you real quick to some. Because you'll be meeting them up for dinner or going somewhere. You're like, hey, how far away are you? And now, no matter the distance between them and where you are, it could be miles. They could be in Harrington and you're in Dover. You're like, how far away are you? I'll be there soon. Like, does not matter. 30 minutes later, they show up, ready to go. Like, hey, what's the matter? I'm like, bro, you said soon like half an hour ago. Like, yeah, that's soon. That's like we have different ideas of what soon means. And so these people, they walk up to Malachi like, how long? I don't know. Soon, I hope. Couple years, 3, 4 years, hopefully not 5. And so they wait. They wait for God's promise. And they write down these words of Malachi, and they take them to the bank, and they're just waiting for them to come true. And for 400 years, they wait. Now, I know if you're in here and you're like, I don't want to wait 400 years. For my promises, I don't think you're alone. Not many things stick around for 400. Like, the only thing that lasts 400 years is Twinkies, and I'm eating all of them while I'm waiting on God to come through with what he said. So you got nothing for 400 years except the promises of God for your life. What do you do with that? While you wait, year after year after year, God's coming through. Well, in this time of history, 400 years, a lot changed. Alexander the Great came and went during this time frame. The dominant world power shifted from the eastern to the western. It became a dark, religious time. Spiritually, people were just kind of backing away. They were having a hard time figuring out what to do with their lives. It was a bad 400 years. But person after person, the people waited for God to come through. One of those people, his name is Zechariah. And we find him at the beginning of the Christmas story, at the very edge of it. At the very edge where God breaks his silence, we find Zechariah. He worked in the temple, and so he was a priest, and so he was in the right place. And he worshiped God, but he did have some problems of his own. He had some struggles. Him and his wife, they couldn't have children. And so Zechariah and Elizabeth, they would pray that God would make them parents. He just wanted to be a father. And so I'm sure during this time when he's praying, people are asking him, like, Zach, why are you wasting your time, man? God has been silent for 400 years. What makes you think? Why do you think something's going to change? And it's a lot of the questions that we have to face ourselves. It's a long time. You've been praying for a long time. You've been hoping for a long time. You've been doubting for a long time. You've been having this question. Is God with me or is he not? Because if you've been having a long silence for a long time, you probably have a question of whether or not God is present with you. So Zechariah prays and prays and prays, and one day the silence breaks. And God sends an angel to Zechariah. And we pick it up in Luke chapter 1. So the angel appears to Zechariah and said this, but the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zechariah. So the angel appears and he kind of has to calm Zechariah down, because angels aren't like the idea that we have of angels. It's not like the precious moments thing. It's not a cake topper. It's not the angel you have on top of your tree, which looks a little creepy, it's freaking out your kids. That's not what angels look like. You should go get a different tree topper and a real tree if you don't already have one in your house. Come on. Y'all smelled that Douglas fir when you walked in. You're like, that's a good Christmas tree right there. 13 feet of Christmas tree. No angel on top, though, because all those angels look weird. So the angel appears to kind of has to calm down Zechariah. He's like Zach, don't worry. Do not fear. You're not dead. You're still here on earth. You're still breathing. And the first words of his message are this. Do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard. And your wife, Elizabeth, will bear a son, and you shall call him John. For 400 years, people wondered where God was. And when he finally breaks the silence, his first message to humankind is, your prayer has been heard. God was always listening. God was always paying attention. God was always hearing what his people were saying. If you're in trouble and you pray and you're in pain, God hears that, and he hears you no matter where you're at. God is listening. People thought they were wasting their time. Zechariah probably wondered why in the world he was praying. But he found out one day that all those prayers had been heard. All his pain had been heard. God was with him and listening. And God breaks the silence to let us know when things are quiet, God is still listening. Now, Zechariah responded probably how a lot of us might. He had his doubts. If you don't have doubts after 400 years of silence and quietness, all that time, you might be way better than Zechariah and all of us normal people. But for the real people in here, you got some questions. You got some doubts probably. And Zechariah responds with this, and Zechariah said to the angel, "How shall I know this?" And what he was saying is, how can this be? How is this going to happen? Him and his wife were both pretty old, and so the probability of them having children was at an all-time low. It's like, how is this going to happen? How can you make this happen? And he's responding with some doubt. And I think that's pretty normal. And now I want to look at another story just to prove how normal this can be. In John chapter 5, we're going to fast forward about 30 years. Jesus has now been born. He's in his prime. He's doing miracles, gaining popularity. He's walking around, and he really is getting traction because everywhere he's meeting the needs of the people. In John chapter 5, Jesus is on his way, and he just steps foot into Jerusalem. And we read this. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, and the Aramaic is called Bethesda, which has 5 roof colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. That's a long time. That's a long time to be on the outskirts of society, and in a culture where they weren't very good at taking care of those who were defenseless, in a culture that they weren't very good at taking care of those in need. They weren't really that good at helping out those who weren't able to help in themselves. That's a long time to be on the outside. Been there for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" Do you want to be healed? I want to take a quick look at this verse and see that when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, it's not knowing as in like, oh, there's Bill. I saw him there last week. It's the God sense of knowing. It's that God had seen this man and his trouble for 38 years. It's like Jesus had been living it with him for 38 years. God saw his pain and knew his pain. And so while this man has been down and out for the last 40 years of his life, Jesus comes around and says he knew he had been there a long time. In your life, in your pain, in your problems, in your broken and hurting heart, God knows. He can see you. In Zechariah, in the story of Zechariah, we found out that God hears even when there's a long silence. That God's long silence is not his absence because he hears our prayers. And in this story with this sick man, we see that he knows. God knows that pain that you're feeling, how alone you feel, how much you just have a hard time even just getting out of bed because you're just tired. God can see that. And he knows. So Jesus asked him a question. Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? And the man, almost as if from all of his doubt, all of that time, all that silence, he responds with his doubts. And he doesn't even answer the question that Jesus was asking him. He doesn't even answer with a yes or no what Jesus would. Do you want to be healed? Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love that. But the man doesn't respond like that. He responds with this. The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up." They believed that at this pool that the water was fed by a spring and it would get stirred up. And so they believed that angels were troubling the water is the kind of term, and that if you got in the water, you would be healed. And so the man says, "I have no one to put me into the water when it's stirred up. And while I'm going, another steps down before me. The man with his doubt responds with a no. There's no way God can heal me. There's no way that God is going to change this situation. There's no one to help me out of this. There's no way that I can conquer it. And if you know enough, if you keep knowing, no way, God, no, God, you can't do that. No, there's no possible way. There's no way that you can help them or her. There's no way you can save them. There's no way you can help my man. There's no way. It'll start to give you knots. That God is not here. That God is not changing me. That I cannot conquer this sin and I will not see God's promises become a reality. It will give you all these knots if you know enough. If you keep saying, no, Jesus, there's no way I can change. It's been too long. You have all this doubt in you. There's no way. Meanwhile, Jesus is just asking if you want to be free. He's asking if you want to be blessed. He's asking if you want peace in your life. He's asking if you want joy in your life. He's asking if you want freedom. And all the while, with our doubt, there's no way. There's no way. And it's almost as if the silence and the time, it just traps us. And over again, we see in our lives, in the Bible, that the doubt will control us. And the doubt will give us all these knots. And it's just a simple equation. The silence multiplied by time will give us doubt. Always. We always doubt when there's just silence and time. But there's a missing ingredient that I think will change this whole equation. There's something that we can add to this that will flip it all around. And I believe it's with our expectations. In all three stories we've looked at, the people had one expectation, and God had another. And he almost doubled their expectations. So the very first one, Malachi 5, 400 years of waiting for someone to come and help them out. Someone that might come take charge. Someone that might come and make their people strong again. See, for 400 years, everyone was waiting for God to send a helper. But God sent a Savior, Jesus. Everyone just was asking for some help. And God said, I think you need some rescuing. I think you need some saving. And so he sent Jesus. Zechariah. For years and years, he prayed that he might be a father. That's his hope. That's a big prayer. And he expected that God might one day make him a father, but he probably didn't expect what kind of son God would give him. And his son would be one of the most well-known people in all the Bible, John the Baptist, who would be the cousin of Jesus, who is written about him that he made straight the paths of the Lord. And when he saw Jesus one day walking toward him, he said, behold, the Lamb who will cleanse the world of its sin. And so we have Zechariah's prayer that God, will you make me a father? And then God's expectation, his expectation doubled and said, I'll give you a son, but your son's not going to be normal. Your son's going to be a big deal. And God doubles the expectation. The sick man, lying there, all of his doubt, all of this trouble going on. And he says to Jesus, I have no one to put me in the water. But if he did have one prayer, it probably is that someone might put him in the water. And so while he expected that someone might put him in the water, he didn't very well expect that one day Jesus would put him on his feet. There's some situations you got in your life where you're just expecting something, but God at the right time is going to double that expectation, and he's going to do something miraculous in your life. He's going to do something big in your life. He's going to do something that you didn't expect because you didn't even ask for it. He just wanted to be in the water, but God put him on his feet. today you got something going on probably. And you just want to be put in the water. Or you want just to be a father or mother. You just want to stop feeling so much pain. You just want to stop being so mad all the time. And God's saying, that's okay, but I got something better in store. But it might take some time. And all the while, God is listening. And he sees you. And so what do we got to add? We got to add belief. Belief that God is doing something. Belief that he's working. He's moving. And that will give us hope. And nothing can beat hope. Not even your knots. So here's what hope is going to do. It's going to take your God is not here thought, and it's going to take out the knot, and now you're going to say, God is here. God is changing me. I can conquer this sin. I will see God's promises become a reality. Your hope can beat your knots. So today, take a step and believe God is moving. Believe that even though you can't hear, you can't see, God hears you. God sees you. He knew that man had been there for a long time. Some of you, you've been there for a long time. Long time. You've been feeling that. A long time. And all the while, God sees you. One last verse I want to read for us this morning. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. For he who promised is faithful. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. Why? Why? What's the point? Why? I've been praying for a long time. I've been dealing with this for a long time. Why pray more? Why even pay attention to this anymore? Why believe still? Why should I have any hope at all? Because he who promised is faithful. He is faithful. He is faithful. Always has heard you, always has seen you, always has been with you, always has been for you. He who promised is faithful. Even when you don't see, even when you don't hear. God's long silence is not his absence. He is faithful. He is faithful.